we always say once you get into vacation rentals, you're moving out of real estate and into hospitality. So take off your real estate hat, your real estate investor hat, and put on your hospitality hat. And that, by the way, is 24/7, 7 days a week.
This is the Passive 25K podcast, a podcast built around the vision of creating wealth through passive income for ourselves and others. The idea of creating income while you sleep seems like a dream come true, but for most professionals, turning this into a reality is a different story. On this show, you will hear real people breaking passive income streams down to the basics, giving you the next steps to start your own passive income journey. If you're new to the show, my name is Kyle Reedstrom from Fargo, North Dakota, where I get to work with my team of agents and investors each day to complete our goal of $25,000 a month in passive income. Now, let's get right into our next conversation. This is the Passive 25K podcast with Kyle Reedstrom. We are, of course, the home of Passive Income University. We help working professionals with one source of income start and complete their passive income journey. And a quick story before we get started with today's show. We are starting to use more and more virtual assistants in our business. Of course, once we have a business, a income stream, the next step is automation, delegation, and systemization. And virtual assistants have been a huge part of that, VAs as we call them. So our community's been diving into this, learning more about this. That's just one of many things we're doing. Find us at p25kg.com if you're looking for next steps today. Click the link below or click the link in the button in our website and let's talk about your game plan. But the thing I'm excited about today is episode 33. We've got Spencer and Ashley with us. We're having a conversation on cash flowing your first vacation rental. Spencer and Ashley, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
So here's the thing. We've talked a lot about short-term rentals on this show, but not as much vacation style rentals. And if you guys don't, what you need to do right now, if you're listening, is stop, go on Instagram, follow Spencer and Ashley because they are an amazing follow. You guys, from luxury travel to operating your vacation rentals, doing business, designing the life you guys want, the lifestyle by design. So talk to us about who you are and how you got to this point, guys.
Sure. So like you said, we're Spencer and Ashley. We're born and raised in the Niagara region of Ontario. We kind of got into real estate a couple of years after we had started dating. Spencer kind of got into it with a friend of his, and it was an Airbnb. And at the time, it was a lot more lesser known. Typically, everyone's first home was like a student rental or a flip, and they decided to do a short-term rental. It did so well that Spencer and I got another one, which did really well. And then we just kind of rolled them together until we had a few more. And then you kind of hit a wall of how many you can purchase personally. So then we started thinking, okay, we know how these operate. We know how vacation rentals operate. We know that the Niagara area is doing really well. So let's operate them for other people. And that is how we started Travelux, which is our vacation rental management company with two other people. And after that, it really took off from there.
Awesome. Okay, so you're like many, that's what I'm hearing. And this is great because I think a lot of people in our audience are sitting here saying, hey, I've got that one, or I've tried this, I've dipped my toe. But wasn't that kind of wasn't that a big jump managing for others and even managing like remote, right?
Yeah, it definitely was a big jump, but we were pretty confident at the time just because we had about 3 or 4 of our own that were operating in the area. So we started off expanding locally. Like we didn't take on properties that were multiple hours away. Our first, if you want to call it co-hosting or management clients, were ones that were within like a 15 to 20 minute drive where we could physically be at the property if there were any emergencies. Like when we started this, we had 0 systems in place. We just had cleaners, a few maintenance people. We knew how to work the Airbnb website and that was about it. And we had success with our other listings. So we were confident that we could do this for other people.
Cool. And I think I like hearing that. Like that's I think where a lot of people would sit. And then, you start to grow naturally into this, right? And I'm a quick base for what we're talking about too. How many properties do you guys own? And then how many do you manage overall? And maybe even some quick stats on like how much monthly is coming in and things like that, whatever you're willing to share.
Yeah, from a vacation rental portfolio, we own 7 personally. We have a few like long-term stuff, but that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the exciting ones. And then we manage just over 60 across Canada now. So
Okay.
that's grown quite quickly.
Okay.
And
60
in terms
across
of,
Canada.
yep, sorry. And then in terms of cash flow, see that really varies. I will say like in our 75th percentile and up properties, you're looking at an average gross monthly revenue of around 7 to 8,000. Our 90th percentile are over 10,000 per month on average. Obviously it's seasonal. That's just an average out over 12 months, but yeah, that's what we're currently seeing now.
Yeah. And that's, that's the stuff. That's the part of short-term rentals that's interesting is, there's some variation, right? And even further, getting into vacation style rentals. I mean, I think the thing that scares a lot of people away is the volatility that this could create. So specifically, how do you feel those two categories are different? If you look at, and it's a perfect question for you guys because, hey, you've started and you have that classic that I would consider, that short-term rental, that's that investment style property. But then there's also those properties that you want to appeal to those vacationers and a different audience. Speak to me about those differences.
Sure. So if someone just has a normal short-term rental property and it's not, say, like a vacation rental property, my thinking is it would likely be in an area where they're targeting people there for work, people who just need to like lay their heads down. It doesn't really matter. Where we are in Niagara is a massive tourist area. These need to be vacation rentals, so they are done up really well. They aren't just like your grandma's old couch, some random bed frame you had in a storage locker. Like they are designed on purpose. Everything is, for the most part, new. Once you walk into these homes, you feel like someone could live there. Someone could walk in and live there. They're fully stocked. And we have great amenities like an outdoor sauna. We have hot tubs, string lighting, which is crazy what $50 string lighting can do, especially in photos, right? Outdoor seating and fire tables. Like in Niagara on the Lake, people want to see vineyards. That's why you go to Niagara on the Lake, right? So we purposely only buy homes where you can see vineyards, something so simple, and it just yields so much more of a return.
Yeah, Ashley, what you just said is so different than if you're just looking for a property that can cash flow, right? Like you just created criteria difference. And I think this all stems from somebody traveling to a place they really think is cool. And they're like, oh, then maybe they go back for a second time. And all of a sudden they're like, what if we owned a property here? What if we could go there for a couple weeks and then rent it out the rest of the time? Like this is the genius of all of this thought of owning these. But it's so different. And I mean, my experience is the same. My wife and I will travel somewhere and we operate short-term rentals in Fargo, North Dakota. And then we'll go into these and we're like, holy smokes, like this is putting out the red carpet, all of those amenities you talk about, like that sauna, like you say, the simple stuff but is high production value, outdoor kitchens. Is this game hard to play if you're just playing the normal short-term game, or did you guys have to adjust? Like, how did that work for you? Or did you always just kind of know, hey, we're going to up this on these vacation rentals?
I mean, we're avid travelers and we've stayed at a lot of Airbnbs. So we've seen like the, good, better, and best models throughout the entire world. So we've always been very experience focused. And I really think that's where a lot of people kind of, I don't want to say make the mistake, or a lot of people kind of forget what they need to do when they're turning their property into a short-term rental. Is it's all about an experience. And that doesn't just mean that it has to be this crazy vacation rental. Like Ashley said, if someone's there for work or they're doing an extended stay, week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks plus, is their experience good for that type of stay, right? Do they have stocked kitchens? Do they have really good Wi-Fi? Do they have, very comfortable beds and linens, to the higher end vacation rentals, all the amenities that Ashley mentioned. So I really think that those are very, very important factors.
So you guys have touched on this a couple times. So apologize for the redundancy, but I really like the tactical aspect of this show and some of the things you're saying. So like if you were going to get one of these places that has the view of the vineyard, which first off, there's a buying criteria. That's what you touched on, Ashley, was, when you're going to go purchase one of these things, we know why people are coming here. Like, first off, we need a view of the ocean, or you need a view of the vineyard, or you need access to the beach, And so I think that's the first stage. But when it comes to the tactics that you guys would say and define, and feel free to list some of these out, because that's kind of what I'm going to take note of. What are the different things that you're maybe consistently implementing into your vacation rentals versus short-term?
So we focus on a few things. One, outdoor space is huge. Like you said before, we are very seasonal. We are the busiest May through October, picks up again sometime in December, and then it really drops off January to May, basically. So how can we make our low season better? How can we entice people to come and pick us? And that would be our outdoor amenities. So that's why we insist on the hot tubs, the saunas. They're on almost every property we have now. The outdoor seating, fire table, all of that stuff, like in the spring, people can still use. And then inside, you really want to focus on the areas where people are going to hang out the most, right? So that's going to be your living room. So you want to make that very comfortable. So we like the big sectionals, a nice big TV. We always make sure it's a smart TV so they can have Netflix and Prime and all that stuff. Beds, we don't skimp out on mattresses and sheets, because that's where people are spending a ton of time. So you want it to be comfortable. And then kitchens, if people are booking your place, especially because we're focusing on bigger single family homes where you can have multiple families come together, a lot of them are picking that area and that home because they can cook, right? So you want to make sure it's fully stocked. So they're not looking around being like, do we have a pan here? Is there a spatula or a can opener? So just making sure those three areas are the best that they can be is usually what we look at.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And we're seasonal too. So that was speaking to a lot of people hey, lean into your busy season, but hey, how can you draw people in during the off season? This is bonus time. Let's make it roll. And you mentioned hot tubs. I know saunas, obviously they kind of go hand in hand, but hot tubs specifically, I like to ask about this. Is the management scary for those? I've heard you can maybe make some more money, but they can be twice the pain. What's been your guys' experience with adding an amenity like that might be a little more high maintenance?
So yeah, it was scary at first when we first started taking on and promoting hot tubs. They're definitely a lot more work, and there's definitely a lot of things that can go wrong. The main thing is if the water's not fixable with just chemicals, you have to drain it and refill it. And at best, you're looking at 10 to 12 hours until it's hot. So if it's a same day changeover and you have a guest coming in that's spending $1,000 a night for 2 nights, that's where it gets interesting. I will say though, there are systems in place that you can have to safeguard it. Obviously, we have a very standardized, sheet that's outside of our hot tubs, basically saying do not go in with any lotions, chemicals, rinse off, make sure your feet are clean. If the hot tub's not left in good condition, there'll be applicable fines, and it's all. And then, we put a reason as to just so everyone can enjoy this, not just them. So that being said, our team is very well trained on how to treat the hot tubs and when to make that decision of, hey, this water needs to be changed. And they have a pretty recurring schedule on changing the water. And that's one thing that you're going to have to do as a short-term rental is probably changing the water at least once a month. And this some other small things, we leave out little containers that has the exact amount of say shock that we put out so the guests can use if they're there for longer. So they can essentially, after every use, they put a little bit of shock in, don't go in for 2 hours after you do this. And that helps kind of preserve the water for their stay as well, and makes it easier for us to treat it once we get there at checkout.
Yeah, and I love the answer to this. I'm literally thinking of myself. We were in Montana and we're staying at a place with a hot tub, and they treated us like big dumb animals. There was big signs saying, hey, exactly what we should do. And it was perfect because we obeyed. So I think that's a great point, Spencer. Some proactive systems for some of these amenities can go a long ways. Just here's what you do after every use. And we were following those instructions. It's just the simple stuff a lot of times, right?
And on top of that too, you had said before, it scares a lot of people to have hot tubs. That is such an opportunity for people who are willing to take on that risk, because not a lot of people have hot tubs. And then, like you said, you rented a house with a hot tub. We do too. And we know that when we travel, we go out of our way, we'll pay a premium for a place with a hot tub. And a lot of people are afraid to have them, right? So if we can find a way to make it good and manage it well, that's the ROI on that's massive.
Yeah, that's so good, because I'm literally thinking we don't have a hot tub at our personal residence. And so when we travel, 100% we check the box of hot tub. Like we're going somewhere, it's like, no, I want that hot tub experience because I don't get it at home. And so like, just think of all of the properties that are weeded out. You know, and that brings up a good point. You guys said, Ashley, you said you have hot tubs and saunas on almost every property. And this might be a hard question to answer, but how much more do you think you can get per night? Like maybe percentage or dollar, like have you ever had the experience where you managed one without and then all of a sudden cranked up the occupancy
Yeah,
Yes.
we've actually done like, an indirect A/B testing on that. So we've had very similar properties, but they're more our clients, right? So we had our properties or some of our clients' properties that were very similar and they had a hot tub. And then we had other clients' properties that hadn't invested or didn't invest in a hot tub. And we saw about, I couldn't put it to a nightly rate, but we saw about a $10,000 to $15,000 increase for the ones that did have a hot tub annually. So essentially your hot tub's paid for in year one, right? And then after that, you're going to be grossing or netting essentially an extra 10 to 15,000. Some is even more, but that was the average.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I'm so glad I asked, because that was amazing to hear. And yeah, that's the investment of it, right? A hot tub can get you ROI. Are there any other things like that you could point to, like, hey, the cost is going to be worth the ROI after year one, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, an outdoor living space is huge, like outdoor dining, fire pits. Those things are really desirable in our area. I mean, obviously, this isn't a cut and paste system everywhere. If you live in an area where it's 100 degrees Fahrenheit all year round, hot tubs probably aren't going to be as desirable. But for us, it gets cool in the evening, so it's great. So yeah, outdoor living area, you see 100% return year one on doing that, as long as it's set up properly.
And design.
Yeah, and the design is so important, and how it's photographed. That the photography is probably going to be your number one asset, assuming that you have desirable things in your place, and staging and knowing, having your photographer know what angles to get, what to capture, what viewpoints. Because at the end of the day, the whole point of those photos is to make it feel like you are in the home when you are on that page. Yes. And you want to capture that person's attention so that they have an emotional connection the second they're on their listing. And for whatever reason, yours might be $500-$600 more for the stay. They just want to stay at your place, even though the other listing might be very similar. For some reason, they feel the need to stay here. And that's what you need to create.
It's so good, because I know I've already said this, but I'm literally walking through myself, booking these places online and thinking, oh, I don't care. I'll spend the extra money for these 2 photos, right? And this is a highly competitive category. Like Ashley, you said already, this isn't just somebody going to stay a couple nights for a conference to lay down their head. This is totally experience driven. And so, I mean, if someone's going to get into this, maybe, and a lot of people that I know that are kicking this around, it's kind of going to be like, hey, we're going to play there and we're going to try to run it as, some side income. So not necessarily, how do I say this the right way? They're not in this professionally. They're going to make their best attempt, which is why we're trying to provide value here. But you're in a highly competitive category. You're competing against professionals. So what are some of the things you guys use? You touched on photos. Do you use any other specific like marketing tools, any other like online tools to kind of up your listing?
Yeah, like we have different tech stacks that we use. Like having people responded to within 10 minutes is kind of like a goal of ours. People really respond to others responding to them right away. We have online guidebooks that all of our guests get, both when they book and then also when 2 days before they actually check in. And those guidebooks, like people love them because they want to know what to do in the area. We spell it all out. And not only that, we have exclusive discounts only with Travelex if they stay at one of our properties, with a bunch of retailers and wineries and cideries in the area. So people love, even though it's like 10% off or a certain flight at a discounted rate. They love that. And then on top of that, Spencer actually spearheaded getting a bunch of how-to videos on the property into this guidebook. So if you're a guest and you can't figure out how to work the TV, it's so annoying that you have to take time out of your day to try and message the host and like figure it out. And the host might not get back to you right away. So we have how-to videos for literally everything we can think of. So now they just have to go to the guidebook, go through and be like, okay, how to work the TV. And it's step-by-step how to work that TV in particular, not a TV like it, that one. So it just getting people the answers they want quickly so that they can go back to their vacation.
And so much of this is so doable. Like this is just, you guys are just walking through this process. So I hope that's encouragement to people listening. It's definitely encouragement to me when I'm thinking about this, and for this podcast, people are playing around with this. A lot of people are sitting on the fence. Like I say, they have that favorite spot. They love to go to Phoenix every year and they've been talking about it for 10 years. We love to go to Big Sky, Montana, and we've stayed in all the different, I swear we've stayed at every Airbnb in the area in the last 20 years. And it's like, when are we going to do this? And so I want to ask you, what would you say to encourage people to knock them off the fence? And then I'm going to counter that question when I come back and say, what would you say to steer people away too? So I'll let you guys answer.
Well, the first thing that I would always suggest is really look into the numbers and the data, because I will say AirDNA is a very popular tool out there, but there is a lot, they're going to hate that I'm saying this, but there's a lot of bad data on there. And there's another technical term for it, but you have to filter out a lot of things. Like sometimes there's a lot of duplicate listings. So how essentially AirDNA works is it scrapes the site twice a day. And if it sees that your average daily, this weekend's nightly rate was $999, like $999, and it goes and checks in the evening and it's blocked off, well, it's going to assume that that listing booked at $999. But the issue is if you have multiple listings on that property, like a basement and an upstairs, and then a third one for the whole home, that whole home at $999, even though the basement booked, AirDNA is going to think, oh, this booked at $999. So you need to go in and filter out all, and that's just one example, but filter out a lot of that stuff to ensure that, okay, this property of interest that I'm looking at, I know I'm comfortable of the revenue that it can project. And then from there, work the numbers backwards, right? Purchase price, negotiations, property tax, all your utilities, so on and so forth. So I would suggest start doing that immediately. Like that's the one thing, okay, like if I can live with these numbers and I really love the area, if it's not a huge cash flow, but hey, I just want, like you said, want to use it as like a vacation spot for myself and it works for you, then that's fine. But if you're looking specifically for cash flow, highly dive into those numbers. And I know
No, that's the biggest thing with Airbnb and vacation rentals is how do I know how much money it's going to make? And there's not, we can go and talk to a property manager and say, ask about a long-term rental and be like, what does stuff rent in the area for a 12-month lease? But when it comes to this, you can be $25,000 off and be like, that can be you can be off in a good way or a bad way, right? So, how do you really nail down the income potential? I'm really curious about that.
Yeah. So there's some filters that I eliminate right away. So there's like days available, which means really days tracked. That means how many days AirDNA has been reporting that income. So anything less than 250 days, I don't even look at it.
Gotcha.
Right? I don't look at it. It's gone. Anything with less than 20 reviews, gone as well. And the big one is once I've gotten a decent data set of like revenue and properties and specific locations that I'm looking at, I'm then going to dive directly into the listing and I'm going to look at all the reviews to make sure they're consistent. So we're in May now. I better see reviews from May, April, all the way down. If there's huge gaps in there, then that's going to trigger, there's probably another listing, or maybe it's an owner block. Maybe it is that person that wants to come down and use it for 2 or 3 months, because when the owner blocks it, AirDNA still thinks it was booked at, it could have been a $999 a night average daily rate. So I'm looking for all of those inconsistencies. And if everything matches up, I'll include it in my analysis. If it doesn't, then it's gone. So those are like some top level things that you can do. And then from there, you can reverse engineer it and go in, okay, these are the top properties. Here's all the ones that they do. What do they have? What amenities do they have? How many bedrooms? What's the square footage? What type of location, what types of things do they offer to guests? And then from there, just mimic success, right? You do not have to reinvent the wheel. If you have all of those things, and maybe even plus, but if you have all of those things and you're in the similar area, you know that you should be pretty comfortable with that revenue number that it's spitting out. And then from there, you can look at opportunities. What don't they have? What kind of things can I add in to, increase this 20, 30, 40, 50%?
Wow. Love that. Love that. Thank you for walking through that. That was really good. And I always want to educate everybody. You got to know both sides. So, I mean, if you were going to say like, hey, this is why I would steer away. This is why some people maybe shouldn't go down the vacation rental path.
There's quite a few, which is sad, but and the only reason I'm saying that is because I think people have this mindset that like, I'll just put a home up on Airbnb and I'll make more than a long-term rent. And it's not like that anymore. There's so much more competition, which we've already talked about. And then again, how vacation rentals are a lot different than just strictly short-term rentals. But I don't think people understand, they do all of that analysis that Spencer says. And then they're like, okay, I'm going to put all the crappy furniture in the house and it should be good. But they don't realize that they need to spend, depending on how big the house is, another $50K just to get it to those numbers, and that the furnishing costs a lot and that supplies cost a lot. And we see it all the time when people get like 75% of the way there and they're like, we'll just do the other 25% once we start making money. And like, but you won't make money. And Airbnb will test you based on those first few bookings and those first few reviews. So we always say you have to be 100% ready to go. So get the extra push, put the extra 8 to 10K in now, and then eventually you will get it back. But Airbnb is a long-term play. This isn't let's try this for 2 years and see what happens. It should be long-term. And another thing is we always say, once you get into vacation rentals, you're moving out of real estate and into hospitality. Mm-hmm. So take off your real estate hat, your real estate investor hat, and put on your hospitality hat. And that, by the way, is 24/7, 7 days a week, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to know and then have systems in place to say, okay, unless I want to give myself a full-time job, which not a lot of us do, I need to put systems in place for other people to manage this effectively for me.
Wow. I hope everybody heard that. Was a huge takeaway for me. 100% ready, not 90%, not 80%, because we've experienced that exact thing where we've said, oh man, we're feeling the squeeze. Like we spent all this money and we're almost there. It's just like, let's go. But you hit it on the head. They're going to get you on your first guest, your first stays. So I hope anybody that's wanting to dive into this, it's really a 2 feet game. You need to get fully in, fully furnished, all the amenities, and then launch and go active. And I think you hit it on the head with hospitality. That's such an interesting, different cap to wear. Real estate investing is very different than, hey, I'm going to host. And that might, by the way, be a plus for some people. That might be play into your strengths, but it very much could be the reason why you shouldn't get into vacation rentals as well. So, hey, we're going to take a quick break, and I'm excited to come back to this episode because I want to dive into some specific examples, some specific experiences Spencer and Ashley have had on vacation rentals. We'll be right back. Hey, wanted to take a quick break from this week's episode, wondering if you've been asking yourself the question, how do I get started in this stuff? Or what are the next steps? Or where are people that are thinking the same way I am, or that are already doing this stuff? People that are on their passive income journey. Well, we were getting this question a lot, and that's why we were prompted to create a community of like-minded investors and entrepreneurs that we call Passive Income University. This is a place where we have a library of videos of things we've done and ways you can educate yourself on the passive income space. Well, we've brought in experts and had conversations of people that have done this, are currently doing this, and have completed certain parts of this. We have gathered a collection of tools, information, spreadsheets, checklists for you to use in order to continue on your journey in the passive income space. We are going to learn and grow together in order for us to start, take next steps, and complete our passive income journey. If you're curious about taking your next steps, check out our website at p25kg.com, where you can apply to be a part of Passive Income University today. We are back on the Passive 25K podcast with episode 33, Cash Flowing Your First Vacation Rental with Spencer and Ashley. They have already been dropping knowledge bombs on us, and it's such a good conversation to have about the differences and the little tactical things that they're doing. But one of the things I love the most on the show is diving into specific examples. So I'd love it if you guys would pick, maybe pick one of your favorites that you've had maybe recently, or just one over the course of your management, where maybe it had some challenges, but you had to get it going as a vacation rental, and walk us through like how you made it successful and maybe even how it's doing. Would love to hear some stories.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could go back to just the amenities conversation that we had. So we had a client that had a pretty nice property. I'd say it was ranking in the 75th percentile. It was doing around 70,000 ish a year, which it was cash flowing pretty good for the owner.
And like price point on that too, Spencer. Like what's
Yeah, I think they purchased it for around 450,000. Like I think
okay.
they're so in around 450, 475. And it was doing about 70,000 for 2 years straight. It was, I think we saw about a $2,000 or $3,000 increase on year two, but they hadn't really made any amenity changes. But we did see a trend that the winter time was very slow, right? There was maybe the odd weekend booking. We had to really drop prices to try to get people in there. It was in a pretty desirable area in Niagara Falls, but we saw that there was 3,000 active listings and only 96 hot tubs in the entire Niagara region, not just this specific city. So we went to them with that data and said, look, like, I know it's a big investment, but what are your thoughts on putting in a hot tub? Like, here's the data. You're going to go from 3,000 to 97 or 96, whatever the number was. I know it was just under 100 at the time. And not only that, but the other properties that we have, we're seeing like $10,000 to $15,000 increase. So they went with it. They invested, I think it was just under $20,000, getting the electrical set up, the pad, they put a gazebo over it to, so they could add string lights and make it really Instagrammable. And now they're doing six figures year over year. Wow. So that's been a big win. And we've been trying to push that on, we still have a few clients that are on the fence about it. And we have people that we talk to that are on the fence on it, because I get it. It's a big investment. It's a lot of money. I know a lot of companies might have financing options. It's still likely, assuming you're in the right area for it, a very good idea to put one of those in, assuming you can handle the management side.
Yeah, I mean, those owners got to be like, being like, hey, you guys are geniuses. This was amazing recommendation. After like that 20,000 is a lot to bite off. Like, that's crazy. Then they jump over six figures, and hopefully that's on repeat, right? Mm-hmm. What as far as where and location, we touched on that a little bit, but I mean, I even want to challenge you guys and think like, as your business is growing and as you guys save up, and you're sitting here saying, I'm in acquisition mode, I'm gonna make my next purchase for your own portfolio. Like, where does your heads go? Like, are you guys going? Do you have your next like destination picked out where you'll own one, or how do your heads work on that?
I don't know. Like, Niagara-on-the-Lake is still does really well. It outperforms almost every other area when done properly. Obviously comes with a higher price point for that reason. So we still love Niagara-on-the-Lake. That's still where we would look, because there are no hotels there, right? There's only really crappy motels. There's always going to be a need for a short-term rental there, and the city welcomes it. There are bylaws, but as long as you follow them, they are great to work with and they're fair. So that's always obviously something that you need to look at too. You can't just walk into a city and be like, here looks good. Like, you need to go down and be like, what are the bylaws? What's the city's attitude towards short-term rentals? What are the neighbors like? Can I get something without neighbors, preferably? What else? And then, I mean, we purchased two just over the border, like in upstate New York. It's like in a small ski town. We really like that area. But we're huge fans of Florida and like the East Coast of Florida. So we went down there for a month last year, had a property, under contract, ended up actually not working out because we just did, like I said, we did our due diligence. We ran the numbers and it was just too tight for our comfort zone. Probably still could have made it work, but glad we didn't, because the cash on cash based on what I'm seeing would not have worked out. And that was at like the height of the market. I think we were over 200,000 over asking on that property. So it was, it was an emotional play. And that's one thing that you need to really try not to fall into is purchasing on emotion, because we were in that seat of, hey, this is a place that we would love to come down and visit and spend time on. But at the same time, that's going to make the most money during that specific time. We also want to be there, and we're investors. So
we just kind of backed out of that one, but we are still aggressively looking in the state of Florida, even like South Carolina. That area seems pretty promising as well.
Oh man, that's such a good like analysis of how I would be. It's head versus heart on this stuff. Like if you're looking at vacation rentals, you're likely going to be purchasing in an area where a lot of other people want to be purchasing. The market quite possibly will be hot. And you just said like you're offering over asking and you already can see it, but you really had to trust the numbers. I want to like, okay, so you saw the right opportunity. And I think this is really valuable to walk through. You guys went down there. Did you get to see the property before you're offering and everything? And so you're saying like, okay, and I think this could work and we really like it. And then kind of use some due diligence time. Like, hey, we did some of that analysis on numbers and that was kind of what tipped it for you, right?
Yeah, well, because it was just such a fast-paced environment, we essentially saw the property. Offers had to be in that night, and I hadn't even had a chance to fully go into the AirDNA data, extract all the bad stuff. And when I originally looked at it, it seemed like it would have worked even on a conservative end. But as I started looking deeper and seeing some more unusable data, the revenue got to a point where it was going to be a little too tight for what we usually like to. And for the amount of money we would have had to put in, there were still renovations needed to get it to the high, 80th, 95th percentile. We would have had to invest a lot of capital to bring it up to that experience, threshold that we like to see it at.
And I think at one point we just looked at each other and we were like, I don't know if this feels right.
Yeah.
When you buy a property and you're really excited and you're like, let's go. We didn't feel that. I know that sounds weird, but it was almost like a gut instinct. And we looked at each other and we're like, I'm not excited for this. And I'm concerned why.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That can be the best advice. Trust your gut on this stuff. And I've also seen it the other way. I've seen it where clients and people that have bought against their gut and it doesn't go away. It doesn't like, you don't sleep longer every night and be like, oh, now I'm happy. Like that sometimes gets amplified, especially if it's underperforming. And sometimes you just end up justifying it like, hey, at least we can use it. But man, that is not really what we're talking about. That's not scale. That's not how we cross the finish line of our goals here. And I'm curious, if you would have purchased that, you guys being, locationally quite a ways away, I just want to know like how your game plan would have worked. Because I think a lot of people will fall in this bucket. Would you have kind of taken that long period of time and just like bootstrapped this thing, hustled it together? Or would you have tried to do most of the work to get it furnished and get it ready, maybe even renovated, and then even managed remote? How would you have kind of handled that, buying that place in Florida?
Yeah, we're at a spot now where we have fairly strong systems in place. So in the beginning, there would have been a lot more legwork. We purchased this property in, I think it was January. So it was a great time to be in Florida anyway. So our plan was to be there for the acquisition, meet cleaners, meet maintenance people, build that boots on the ground team, but then everything else from a system process, we can manage remotely. So like we have a team of VAs, like I said, those guidebooks are wonders. If you cover every corner and every little item in the area, instructional videos, you're not only like having that available for your guests, but it's also a good reminder for yourself, especially when you have scale and have a lot of properties that you can go back in and reference like, oh, this is where the boiler is. That's where the electrical panel is. That's how you do this. So having that very detailed guidebook and manual is extremely helpful, especially when you're managing properties from a distance. So that's kind of how we were going to tackle it. We were going to be there for the beginning, probably wait for the first few bookings to come through, make sure that, the cleaners were pretty accountable there. But we also made really good connections with real estate agents down there that, we still, we've gone on trips together to this day now. And, if we were ever in a pickle, we'd be able to lean on them and their contacts. So just utilizing like realtors is a huge, huge one as well.
That's awesome. And that's so good because they have a vested interest in, partnering with you for future, for growth. And they know where your goals might be. So I heard things like getting those cleaner relationships, maintenance, definitely real estate agents, which I always say getting a good real estate professional can unlock all those relationships for you, just kind of like you touched on, Spencer. That's huge.
And getting one who understands Airbnb too, because in short-term rentals, because they'll tell you exactly what you need to know. Like, this location is great. Like, we don't know, we're not local to the area. It's different here in Niagara. We know which locations are great, which areas are good. We don't know in Florida. So we wanted someone specifically who was good with short-term rentals, maybe had one or two of their own, and they could say, this area is great for this area is known for this. And then we could kind of pick out who our avatar is, which down there would likely be like families and such, and be like, where do they go? And they can be like, okay, you want to focus on here or whatever city. That's really important.
That's huge. And I think people stray away from that. Sometimes I hear people say, I don't want to have a real estate agent that has short-term rentals because they're my competition. I'll say this from first-hand experience. Available capital comes and goes. So these people might have a couple, but they might just be cash flowing and out of acquisition mode. And guess what? They still have the expertise. They still know the best advice. And for you, the way that they make more capital is sell properties. So such a great partnership. Definitely not competition. And really, a lot of these markets, there's enough to go around. And so, making that partnership is huge. Great advice there. And I also want to touch on that guidebook. I even thought about the comprehensive nature of these guidebooks could be an amazing thing just to walk yourself through the experience of creating one for a potential property, because you're going to get to know a lot about that property before you even maybe own it. And man, after, like you said, I love the part about every house should have one of these dang guidebooks, because it reminds you how to use it. These are huge things to document. So great tips there, gang. So I want to also hit the other side of the coin. If in your portfolio of properties you own or manage, I'd love to hear maybe one that's struggling, maybe key in on why it's struggling. And some of these things you can change, some of these things you can't. My guess is you've probably changed the things you can control, but I think it's really good knowledge to understand, hey, what's holding some of these back?
Yeah, so we're pretty picky on who we take on as management clients now. We have an avatar of a type of client that we want to work with now. When we first started in 2019 or early 2020, we kind of took on anyone who was willing to hire us, right? And some of those people are still around today, and we love working with them. But the properties themselves need some maintenance. Like it's a lot of older furniture. So we get the same types of complaints. You can't, especially as a management on the management side, you can't force a client to upgrade things. We make suggestions, we've even sourced, but you can't force them to upgrade. And that will significantly impact the amount of money that they will bring in yearly.
Yeah, that's really good. And I'm assuming for yours, the other side of that coin is if you own them, you might not always have the $4,000 you need to throw at the property, right? But at least you're kind of, and Ashley, you're kind of tracking that feedback through reviews, or that's probably more private reviews, or are you kind of pulling that feedback out, or how are you getting a lot of that information?
Yeah, one of the things we do is once a guest checks out, if we haven't heard from them already, we send them a nice thank you note for staying with us. Let them know the importance of their review and how it impacts us on continuing to be on platforms like Airbnb. Then we do also ask for if there's anything that you thought that could have been improved or added or made your stay more comfortable. If you could let us know privately, that would ensure us to make the next person's stay even more enjoyable. And we find that little note there has given us a ton of feedback, because one thing's always constant about setting up an Airbnb, it is always chaotic. There has never been a time where it was like from point A to Z of like, that was easy, that was smooth. So things get missed, even though you could have the most detailed supply list, the counts and so on and so forth. Sometimes little things get missed, and could be as small as like a pizza cutter. It's not going to affect the review, but they just said, hey, this would have been nice to have. And sometimes they'll let you know of like an ongoing issue. If you see it happen multiple times, you should probably look into it, right? Because yes, they were nice about it, but hospitality, not every guest might react the same way. So just constantly asking for feedback is almost like a temperature check on the property itself.
And this is, again, you're wearing that hospitality hat if you're going to get into this, whether you like it or not. And right on par with what Spencer just said, I think of a Airbnb we stayed in Arizona. We were in Phoenix for our anniversary. And they asked the question in a way that usually I would play the Midwestern nice, like, hey, everything was great. We loved it. But they said, what was one specific thing that we could have done that would have made your stay even better? And it made me say, well, we actually had to bring down a pack and play. And if there was one there already, we would have just had it, And so I don't know if they went and bought a pack and play, but that pulling that out could definitely have elevated, or, I know we look for that filter every now and then with kids as we're going to places, like playing into that. So yeah, that's really good. Any other things, I really like what you said, Ashley, about resistance to upgrade, and that's something that is thankfully changeable. Anything that's I think of location being so important with these things, but sometimes it might not be too. I'm thinking of some of the ones that I know that just have like a pool and it's kind of a secluded environment, no views, right? But are there any things to kind of stay away from with these vacation rentals? Maybe this is too broad, but I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts, like some things that you can't change necessarily that are hurting.
Sure. Neighborhoods, just like a normal house on a neighborhood, it's not. So I think just to back up from that, we always tell people, like, pick an avatar, like who are you trying to attract to your house, and stick with that. Because sometimes you walk through a house and you're like, I'm not quite sure if you want a bachelor party or a family. Like, I'm not getting which vibe you're going for. Once you start working backwards, and for us, typically it's families and then multiple families coming together or big groups of friends, and being like, what would they want? And they don't really want to be nose to nose with other people, right? A lot of people come to get away from other people, so they want space. And that's what we're looking for here. So we don't want just door-to-door neighbors. Someone who might like that is someone who's like, if it's a smaller unit and they're traveling alone, they might feel safer in like a neighborhood. So then that's what you would look for. So kind of honing in on who your avatar is. And what else would you say that you can't change?
Well, just from an overall location standpoint, like obviously we do all of our due diligence for our clients in the beginning, and we've steered people away from making an acquisition that we thought wasn't a good idea. But let's say it's an active Airbnb in a not a very good location. There are some things that you can do to bring people to you. You can turn it into a staycation, right? If you're not close to any like major attractions or amenities, like, can you add things like, hot tub, sauna, pool, really cool outdoor space, a games room, something where, and then from there, there's so many different things you can do from marketing the property to get people there. You can work with influencers, have an Instagram page, so on and so forth, to draw people in, where, now you kind of, you can't really lift the house up and go to a better location, but what can you add to bring people to you? And that's kind of the one thing that we'll say is like, okay, this location has to be a staycation because you're 25 minutes away from everything. So these are the lists that you need. You need a fire pit, you need a sauna, you need a hot tub. We can talk about a pool down the road, but these are like the minimums that you need. You need outdoor games. You need to like create like this really cool atmosphere for kids and so on and so forth. Have like the pack and plays and really have everything that they need, where they just show up there. They don't need to go to the store when they get there because you forgot something. Everything's there. So, that's one thing that we would definitely say if you're kind of working with a tough location.
Man, that's really good. And again, if my wife and I were looking, we would definitely use that advice and cater to a family that has kids, because that's what we are. And that changes. It's not us giving a list on the table that's all the places to go for the nightclub at night. It's more board games and, children's books and things like that. It's interesting.
Pack and plays.
Yes, there it is. So I want to know where you guys stand on the future of this industry, this future. I've heard of this compared, like hotels versus Airbnb, short-term rentals. There's been a lot of changes that the websites are doing, and we're kind of subject to some of those changes in this world. Are you thinking this ball's just getting rolling, or is there going to get oversaturation with this? I'd love to hear your mindset.
No, people ask us this all the time. Like, should I even bother entering the short-term rental or vacation rental market? Is it oversaturated? We would say no. People are always the people that choose a short-term rental will likely always choose a short-term rental over a hotel, right? There's different things that a vacation rental gives you that a hotel can never, ever, ever give you unless they start owning single family homes in the middle of like cottage country or whatever, right? And oversaturation really just gives you the chance to be better. Like if we're looking at, we would say an oversaturated market or having a lot of Airbnbs up for rent, just look at them all and be like, how do I be better? And then you will perform better. It just gives you the chance to be different. What we are seeing is more unique stays are becoming very, very big. And you can create that in a normal looking house that's like wallpapered walls, murals, signs inside, making things super Instagrammable where people are like, I want to go sleep there, but I want to take pictures there. If you're near Disney in Florida, all of those Disney themed houses, like people will pay a premium because their kids will love it, right? It's more like you just need to put more into it and you'll still make the same amount of money. But I don't think it's a reason for people to get out. You just have to be more creative.
And there's a reason why the market appears to be oversaturated. It means because there's a ton of demand, right? And that's another thing that you can look at too. Look at the increase in listings year over year, but look at the average revenue year over year and kind of see the trends in that market, right? And even then, that doesn't, if the results are not favorable, if they're not in the plus, take a look at what the top properties are doing and what they're bringing in and, reverse engineer it. Can I acquire property at a price and have enough capital to make it like these to get it to that revenue where it makes sense? The answer is yes. Great. The answer is no. Then that answers that, right?
And typically, just to point out there too, we like to recover our furniture costs and decor costs like at the 2-year mark, not at the 1-year mark.
Okay. So yeah, that's great. That's a great point for, hey, what should be reasonable in here, for us to get this money back. That's really good. You guys have Travel Lux, and I love this, and I love following you guys because not only are you doing this, you're actually like experiencing how other people are doing this. And one of the bonus questions I wanted to ask you was, what's one of your favorite places you guys have traveled? Maybe it's different, but maybe it's the same.
Oh man, people ask us this a lot as well. I love the Philippines.
Okay.
We love Portugal.
Yeah, I really like Greece. That's probably one of the nicest Airbnbs we've stayed at so far, outside of, we stayed in Mykonos. It was like a beautiful overlooking like the airport runway, and it sounds bad when you hear airport runway, but it literally was overlooking like the sea. You could see the planes flying in. This thing could literally, the outside alone could house like 100 people. It had like 10 different sectional areas, a huge infinity pool, like covered dining areas, like just, it was perfect for entertainment. The inside was beautiful as well. And it was, very Greek vibes, but just, it was that whole experience of like, I didn't want to leave the place, even though there was things to explore. So,
and the thing about Portugal and Greece, like Europeans, is when we stay at Airbnbs in those places, the person who owns it is literally meeting us at the door to give us a key, right? We don't do that. That's really unheard of in North America. It's all about self-check-in. And obviously we love self-check-in as well, but it was so nice for this person to be like, hi, this is our place. I'm going to show you around. And the one time in, were we in Greece where it was like the little old couple? No, Croatia. We were in Croatia. And we had like a little old couple and it's just like a little unit on top of their unit. They were so cute.
Yeah, just go above and beyond. Like the one in Greece, they cleaned the place. When we left, they came upstairs. They asked obviously before, but they made sure everything was spotless. Like, when you walk into an Airbnb like that first day and it's just like pristine, just like the photos. But if you've been there for a few days, your stuff kind of gets there, things get moved around. Literally the outside looked like the pictures every time we came back every day. So we thought that was pretty cool from a hospitality perspective. And they even offered to cook us dinner the one night. Like it was just next level hospitality. So we're like, hey, we obviously can't do that. Well, not yet. We can't do that to scale right now, but how can we meet somewhere in the middle and differentiate ourselves from a lot of these listings? Because a lot of them are just people that have automated everything and, they're not responsive and there isn't that level of hospitality where I think platforms like Airbnb is really trying to get back to.
Yeah, you're right. That's a cool question to ask and something like that you really valued on your experience. So that's really neat, gang. And so, the people that are listening to this, we've crossed some different topics. We've talked about travel. We've talked about vacation rentals. How can they follow you and learn more about what you're doing?
Sure. We're pretty active on Instagram at Spencer and Ashley. We try to share our journey. You'll see a lot of just our lives kind of like behind the scenes, real estate, short-term rentals, a lot of travel when we are traveling. So a lot of everything.
And then,
Cool.
our property management website's just traveluxpropertymanagement.com. You can kind of see our portfolio there and kind of see what we're all about.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for those resources. That'll all be in the show notes. You guys have been super insightful, have tons of notes here. I love what you're doing online and creating that vision. I hope you guys continue to fight for that freedom, that lifestyle that you're chasing. It inspires me. And I love to just get into the experiences you guys are having. So thanks for being on the show. And finally, I'll end our episode asking you, the audience, what's one action step you can take based on what you heard today? Don't wait. Action is key. And if you're currently on your passive income journey, reach out, tell us your story. We truly believe that we can accomplish financial freedom better together. This has been another episode of the Passive 25K podcast with Kyle Reedstrom. If you liked what you heard today, I encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video so we can get more of these conversations out to people that are curious about starting their passive income journey. And if you are thinking about starting your passive income journey, the next steps are to go to our website at p25kg.com and hit apply. This will get you into our application to join our community called Passive Income University, where you can learn everything there is to know about starting and completing your passive income journey. Thanks again for tuning in. I'll catch you next time for another conversation on the Passive 25K podcast.